Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Let us continue with our tafsir of Surah Aal-Imraan bihawlillahi wa quwwatih, and we are on ayah number 137. قال الله تبارك وتعالى قد خلت من قبلكم سنن فسيروا في الأرض فانظروا كيف كان عاقبة المكذبين. In this ayah, Allah Jalla wa Ala speaks of the heavy loss incurred by the Muslimin on the Battle of Uhud, and He gives them some solace. He says, قَدْ خَلَت. So قَدْ is for emphasis in the past tense. خَلَت, خَلَى يَخْلُو, normally means to be empty, but in the time sense it means to pass by, the days which have passed by. So before you, the sunan, plural of sunnah, which means the ways. He's saying, there have been ways which have passed by before you, meaning events which Allah has decreed. The events that he's referring to is that the believers can sometimes enjoy victory, but also suffer loss. Both must happen, and this is the sunnah of Allah Jalla wa Ala. He does not allow one side to be victorious all the time, and He does not allow the other side to lose all the time. فَسِيرُوا فِي الْأَرْضِ, from Sara Yasiru Sayran, which means to go or to travel. So a sayyara means a car because it travels much. He says travel out through the ard, the land in this case, and look at what was the aqibah, which means the end result of the mukaththibin, those who belied the message of the prophets. So to put simply, Allah Jalla wa Ala is saying, yes, you suffered a loss and you are grieving, that is true. In Uhud, 70 of the Muslimin were killed and slain as shuhada. Definitely this is painful. However, he's saying you are not the only one. There have been many other people as well from the believers who have suffered a similar loss. This is just the sunnah of Allah Jalla wa Ala. So do not be overly grieved. And he says travel through the land and look at the result of those who denied, meaning the final end victory is for the believers, because these people who denied the message, they are all destroyed. So even if the kuffar have the upper hand in the battle, and maybe they win the battle and they win the war, that does not mean that they are rightly guided. Allah Jalla wa Ala will still destroy them. Also notice when he says look at what was the end result of the beliers, it may not be possible for you to travel and look at the remnants of those who belied. So you may not be able to see it with your vision, with your basar. However, you can see it with your basira, which is your insight, because you have been informed about those who were destroyed from the beliers. So you can still have insight even if you cannot have sight. But if you can do both, then that is better. So reflecting on this ayah, we can pick up on some useful lessons. Firstly, you give solace when somebody suffers a loss. Allah Jalla wa Ala does this to the Muslimin in this ayah, but so should we do this to others when they have suffered a loss. This is from the noble characteristics and qualities of a person, is that he gives solace to those who are grieving, and this is ihsan. In this ayah we learn that Allah Jalla wa Ala tells us to travel through the land. So this would mean that it is permissible to travel in the land for admonition purposes. So for example, if you know that a particular people who were rebellious to Allah Jalla wa Ala were destroyed in a particular place, and you were to go to that place for the sake of admonition and for the sake of a reality check, a bit like visiting a cemetery. It reminds you of your death, and it reminds you of the akhirah, so it's a reality check. It keeps you on the straight and narrow. So if it is for this purpose, then that is absolutely fine, because this ayah allows it. However, if it is for just tourism purposes, and to be taking selfies and all that type of rubbish, then this is not allowed. The Prophet ﷺ said, do not enter the dwelling places of those who wrong themselves, unless you are crying, lest what afflicted them should afflict you. So the matter is more serious than we may think at first. But certainly for admonition purposes, it is permissible, even recommended. Ayah number 137. هذا بيان للناس وهدى وموعظة للمتقين. This is, he says, meaning this Quran and also the previous ayah, he says it is a bayan, it is a clarification, something which makes clear to the people, and it is a hudan, guidance, and a maw'idha, an admonition, meaning something to take lessons from. للمتقين, for those people of taqwa. So reflecting on this ayah, we take that the Quran makes plain to the people that which they need to know from matters of guidance. So he says it's a bayan for the nas, for the people, that includes Muslim and Kafir, but then he says it is a hudan, a guidance, and a maw'idha, an admonition for the muttaqeen. He does not say for the people. Why is this? The reason is it is only the muttaqeen who will accept the guidance of the Quran and who will accept the preaching and the admonition of the Quran. The kuffar will not. The kuffar will turn away. This is i'rad, when you turn away. Otherwise, yes, the Quran has the ability to guide the kafir, as long as the kafir reads and understands the Quran with an open mind and heart, without any baggage and prejudice. So then in this ayah, there is the fadila, or the virtue of taqwa, in that it will enable you to see the guidance as guidance and the good admonition as good admonition. Those who have no taqwa will not be able to see the guidance from the misguidance. It will become mixed for them. They will see misguidance as guidance. We seek refuge in Allah from being transformed into this type of a state. Ayah 139. وَلَا تَهِنُوا وَلَا تَحْزَنُوا وَأَنْتُمْ الْأَعْلَوْنَ إِن كُنْتُمْ مُؤْمِنِينَ. So some more advice given to the Muslimin. Again, Allah Jalla wa Ala is consoling them and giving them advice and guidance as to what to do in this grieving state of theirs. He says, do not have wahan. Wahana yahinu wahnan, to be weak. Do not be weak. This means to say, do not lose your resolve in fighting for the sake of Allah Jalla wa Ala just because you've suffered a setback. So basically, get back up, shake the dust off you, and keep going. وَلَا تَحْزَنُوا, and do not grieve just because you've suffered a setback. So do not say, oh, what's the point, we've lost. This is a loser's attitude. Look how Allah Jalla wa Ala inculcates a winner's attitude in the Muslimin. He says, وَأَنْتُمُ الْأَعْلَوْنَ. A'la means higher. You are the higher. How do we make sense of that? The Muslims have suffered a great loss, and yet the Muslims are higher. How come? It's because the Muslimun are fighting for the truth and Tawheed, and the Kuffar are fighting for falsehood and Shirk. The slain of the Muslimin are in the highest reaches of Jannah as Shuhada, and the slain of the Kuffar are in the lowest depths of Jahannam. And so this is how the Muslimun are above the Kuffar. And also Allah Jalla wa Ala is your Mawla, and He is not the helper of the Kuffar. Likewise, the final good end is with the believers and not the Kuffar. So when you take all of that into account, then how can you be despondent, and how can you lose courage? In fact, you should be full of courage and confidence. In kuntum mu'minin, if indeed you are truly believers. Meaning to say that if you are truly believers, you will be higher than the kuffar. But if you are not truly believers, then no, you will not be higher than the kuffar. So success depends on iman. So reflecting on this ayah, we pick up some motivational lessons. Just because you suffer a loss or you suffer a setback does not mean that you now become dispirited and despondent and lose hope. Rather, get back up and keep your head up and eye on the prize. And the mu'minun are particularly ordered against becoming weak and losing courage and grieving. And we learn the lesson that as long as you have strong iman, you would be higher than the kuffar in terms of success. And that ultimate victory will be with the Muslims. How can it not be when Allah Jalla wa Ala and the Malaika are supporters of the mu'mineen? And when we look at the state of the Muslims today, we find they are not the uppermost. The kuffar are superior. Why is this? It is all down to Iman. People think it is down to technological advancements and strong economies and so on. This is wrong. In this ayah, we clearly learn that it is down to Iman, because that is the condition that Allah Jalla wa Ala stipulates in the ayah. So it is vital for us to learn and know that you do not linger on the losses of the past. Rather, you may learn your lesson and then look forward. Also notice the waw in the wa antumul a'launa could be the waw of the hal. So do not become weak and do not grieve whilst you are the uppermost, if you are believers. So it would mean to say that you are superior to the kuffar. So how does it even make sense that you are becoming weak and grieving? It is also possible that the waw is ibtida'. So in that case it would be starting a new sentence. In any case, the lesson is basically the same. You do not become weak, you do not lose courage, and you do not linger on the losses of the past. Ayah 140. In yamsaskum qarhun faqad massa al-qawma qarhun mithluhu wa tilka al-ayyamu nudawiluha bayna an-nasi وَلِيَعْلَمَ اللَّهُ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَيَتَّخِذَ مِنْكُمْ شُهَدَاءَ وَاللَّهُ لَا يُحِبُّ الظَّالِمِينَ. Allah Jalla wa Ala in this ayah continues to give solace to the Muslimin. He says, if a qarh has touched you, and a qarh here means a wound or an injury, then a similar wound has touched al-qawm, the people, meaning others. He's referring to the kuffar. So he's basically saying, look, you've been injured, yes, but you know what? The kuffar have been injured as well. So you are not the only ones. So again, just like in ayah 137, the solace is that when you know that others have been afflicted the same way you have, and that you're not the only one, then this is the comforting thought. He says, وَتِلْكَ الْأَيَّامُ, and those days, or we can translate it as, and such are the days, نُدَاوِلُهَا. This is a new verb. دَاوَلَ يُدَاوِلُ مُدَاوَلَةً, which means to alternate or rotate. Sometimes a discussion can be a mudawala because it is an alternation of speech. So you're going to speak, then the other person will speak, and so on. You're alternating or rotating the speech. He says, such are the days we alternate between people. So what does that mean? It means some days you're going to have loss, your enemies are going to have victory, and some days you're going to have times of happiness, sometimes you're going to have times of sadness, you're going to have times of richness, times of poverty, you're going to have times of health, and times of illness, and so on. And so that, he says, Allah may know those who have Iman. In other words, with these changing fortunes that Allah Jalla wa Ala decrees, it is a means of a test, and only by means of a test can you sort out the real believers from the fakes. As for Allah knowing, then of course Allah knows even before the test who is going to pass and who will fail. But the knowledge referred to here is what we call ilmun lahiq, the subsequent knowledge, meaning it's the knowledge which occurs after the event, as opposed to the antecedent knowledge, which is the knowledge of Allah before the event. So that is before He tests you. The subsequent knowledge has reward and punishment hinged on it. The antecedent knowledge does not have reward and punishment hinged on it. In other words, Allah Jalla wa Ala does not reward or punish you because of what He knew past eternally about you, but rather He only punishes or rewards after you have completed your actions, be they good or evil. And He may وَيَتَّخِذَ, notice it is mansub bil-fatha because it's ma'tuf on the ya'lama, and the ya'lama is also mansub bil-fatha because of the lam at-ta'lil, which turns the verb into mansub. So he may take from you shuhada. So these are the people who are killed by the kuffar on the battlefield, fighting in the way of Allah Jalla wa Ala. And he says Allah does not love the zalimeen. So these are the kuffar. And literally any type of sin is zulm. But if you have a sinning Muslim, then Allah does love the sinning Muslim to the extent of his iman, and hates him to the extent of his zulm. Reflecting on this ayah, we find yet again Allah Jalla wa Ala gives solace, and so should we, because this is a noble quality. The idea is to motivate those who are grieving, or those who may be devastated. But probably the biggest lesson from this ayah is the mudawala of the days. This is part of why Allah Jalla wa Ala has created humans, to test them. And the way He tests them is by alternating the days. Some days you are happy, some days you are sad, some days you have victory, some days you have loss. And so through affliction, He is able to test the worthy ones from the unworthy. If the Muslims only ever won their battles and suffered no losses whatsoever, then there would be no shuhada. And actually in the long run, or in the bigger picture, that is a greater loss, not a greater gain. Because if you take the hereafter into account, then it is a good thing that there are shuhada who would reach the highest stations of Jannah. That in and of itself is a greater good. But that would come about only through a loss, where Muslim soldiers die on the battlefield. Also, suffering a loss would mean that your heart is not attached to this world. If you only ever enjoyed victory, what would happen? Your heart would attach to this world, and you would begin to love this world. It would become your reason for existing. Now, if you think about it, that in the bigger picture is a greater loss, because your heart should not be attached to this world. It should be attached to the akhirah. So the point is that even in loss, there is a greater good. And it does not have to be in the battlefield. It could be in terms of your health, in terms of your wealth, and all other affairs. Suffering losses detaches your heart from this world, and that is a good thing. That is Allah Jalla wa Ala doing you a favor. That is Him giving you the bitter medicine. We can also take that the knowledge of Allah Jalla wa Ala can be divided into two categories: ilmun sabiq, this is the antecedent knowledge, and ilmun lahiq, that is the subsequent knowledge. And finally, we can also take that Allah Jalla wa Ala does not love certain types of people, which means that He does love certain other types of people, and that love is from His divine attributes. And of course, love is one of the great making qualities, which is to be attributed to Allah Jalla wa Ala first and foremost. هذا والله أعلم.